afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the event today and joining our first round of sessions. Joining me is Dean. He is a diversity and inclusion strategist who has spent more than a decade focused on talent management and creating frameworks for equity for organizations. Dean possesses a Master's of Human Resources Management degree from York University and a Leadership and Inclusion certificate from Centennial College. Thank you, Dean, for your presentation today. Thanks for taking time out of your day and doing this. I just want to make a note just to everyone watching. We really encourage everyone to take part in the poll questions that Dean has posted, and also to ask a lot of questions at the end of the presentation and utilize the chat as much as possible. Okay, so everyone enjoy the presentation, and Dean, I'll try to be back at the end just to help close things out. But I may be in another session helping one of the other speakers, but I'll try to be back. Okay?
Great, and we end at 1:55, right?
Yes, I believe that is the time, 1:50. But if you go over a little bit, that's okay.
No problem. Thanks again,
Okay,
Sandra. Appreciate your help.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
All right, well, listen. Thanks, everybody. Listen, everyone, I'm so excited to be here, so excited to be a part. For those that are here with us, we're going to learn about equitable recruitment strategies, and I'm going to get right into our discussion for today. Let me just do that. Yeah, and so here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about a few things that I think are important to the conversation. Number one, we're going to define some terms around diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, and what they really mean. We're going to talk about why now, why is it important for us, and then we're going to go into a couple of practices that I believe that are extremely important to consider when you want to hire and bring in talent from diverse backgrounds and experiences. And so I want to put up this first poll just so I can kind of get a better understanding of where everyone is at in terms of your experience with regards to hiring and diversity. Do you all see that? I just want to make sure. Can you see the poll? Maybe if someone can let me know in the chat that you're seeing it, that'd be great. Okay, great. All right, so the poll basically asks, is hiring from candidates from diverse backgrounds and experiences important to your organization? So if you could let me know real quick what your thoughts are on that, that would be fantastic. Is everybody seeing where they can input on the poll? Because I don't see any. Okay, there we go. Yep, I'm starting to see it. It's great. I've got a couple of votes in. Got a couple of votes in. That's great. A couple more. It's fantastic. I'll give you a minute or so, everyone. All right. All right, so from the results that we have here, what we can see is that the majority feel like, yes, your organization really, really wants to ensure that you hire candidates from all different types of backgrounds and walks of life. And again, some feel that that they're not sure it's that important, and then some feel it's absolutely not, that crucial for organizations. So thanks so much for participating. That really appreciate those who did. Let's move forward in terms of our discussion, and let's talk about what diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity really means. So when we think about the word diversity, it's not really necessarily what a lot of us actually think it means. Diversity is actually unique characteristics that make up all of us as individuals. And so that is identity based, yes, and that's also visual diversity, but there's also other elements of diversity that people can't see. A lot of times, for example, you cannot always see an individual's religion. You don't always know someone's ethnic background by just looking at them. And so the reality is, and I want to be very honest with you about this, is that a a lot of times when we think about the word diversity, we think of an us versus them. And the them is typically the straight, able bodied white male. And that's just the truth. That's how we look at diversity a lot of times. So it's everyone else and the versus almost a straight, able bodied white male. But the truth is if we think about the word diversity, even the straight, able bodied white male, when you dig into their background and dig deeper, they have dimensions of diversity as well. And so this conversation is not an us versus them, it's actually an all of us conversation together when we think about the word diversity. And what we really, really want is we want people from all backgrounds, all walks of life to work to come to apply to our organizations and get hired, right? And we want to make sure we create fairness in our processes so people could be hired. And then what we want in our organizations is we want inclusion. We want individuals to come, bring their whole selves to work so they can do their best work and perform in an environment that's collaborative and cohesive. And in that environment is where people feel a sense of belonging. And the truth is that belonging, there's a principle behind it, which has been researched that says people that feel like they belong in an organization are 167% more likely to promote their organization above those who don't feel like they belong. So one of your greatest, actual recruitment and retention strategies is ensuring that people belong. And the conversation that we're having, really, particularly in North America, is the conversation about equity, because we recognize that there's some people in society that have greater advantage than others. We all have privilege, but there's some that have greater advantage. They are hired more frequently. They're put into leadership roles more often. And what we want to do is we want to create equity so that everyone, doesn't matter who you are, irrespective of your dimension of diversity, you can be hired into an organization or you can be successful. And so that's what we're really, really talking about. And at the end of the day, I want to say this: we're all hiring humans. Listen, I want to really let you know, I am not a diverse candidate. That is not me, because that actually brings across a concept of inferiority. We have regular candidates and then we have diverse candidates. That's not accurate. I come with several dimensions of diversity, and so does everybody on this call. So really, at the end of the day, we're hiring humans. What we're trying to do, though, is we're trying to make it equitable, especially for those who have been stereotyped, marginalized, prejudiced, and discriminated during in organizations or even during hiring processes. And why now? Because it's just the time, and that's really the key. We know the current climate. We see all the different types of discrimination that's been happening towards specific groups, and we know that this is the time to see it happen. So really, the time is absolutely now. So I want to talk to you about 5 different principles real quick on how we can truly promote equity in our hiring practices. And I'm going to start first with looking at job descriptions. And so here's a copy of a job description, from an organization. We call it Company X. I want to help you, take a look at your job descriptions and see how we can truly improve them and make them more equitable. Number one, I encourage you to speak to diversity practices in your boilerplate. So that preamble that you usually have about your organization, how great it is, make sure you speak to your diversity practices. The reason is that candidates are asking these questions. I remember I was doing an interview a couple months back for a senior sales manager that we actually hired. And I kid you not, in my interview with this individual, she asked me nothing about sales or sales processes when it came to time for her to ask questions. The only question she asked was, what are your inclusion practices? What are your diversity practices at your company? And so candidates want to know. And so why not just give them a heads up to let them know that this is something that your organization takes serious, and do it straight from the boilerplate. Next, I encourage you to separate your assets and your skills, your qualifications, your nice to haves, and your must haves. Now, the particular reason why is, if you notice this job description, it's like all of our typical job descriptions. They have like about 10 qualifications, and we want the world, right? From these organizations. Or from these people. We want everything. We want, everything they can bring to the table. The truth is that most candidates don't have everything that we want. But aside from that, when research has been done on job descriptions, what they've noticed is that woman-identified candidates will apply to jobs when they have at least 90 to 100% of the qualifications, whereas men or male-identified candidates will only apply when they have 60 to 70%. So that means that women are looking at our job descriptions saying, I only have 70% of the qualifications, and they're not applying. So what we should do is separate our nice to haves and our must haves, and or don't even have nice to haves on it, just have exactly what you need in that job. If that ends up being 5 bullet points, then that's what it is. But the key is you can what you'll do is open up the floor to attract more candidates to apply into your positions. And then and then finally, the last thing I want to say is consider gender neutral language. And that means looking at your job description, potentially putting your job description through a job description decoder, or I know, for example, Textio does this type of work as well, where you can actually find out if your job description skews to be more male dominated or female dominated. In some situations where you know you're hiring more men into positions, you might want it to skew more on the woman identified side. So you might want to put more words that appeal to that gender base, and vice versa, or make it more gender neutral. So these are some things you can actually consider to ensure that your job descriptions are equitable. Another thing that you can consider is including an equity statement on your job descriptions. This is a little bit different from what we call an equal opportunity statement. An equal opportunity statement says something to the effect of, we hire people irrespective of race, gender, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What this is actually telling people is, listen, if you meet the minimum requirements and your experience is close to what you see listed, still consider applying, right? So the goal is to actually encourage people to apply to your job description. And if you notice the other bold statement, we encourage people from all backgrounds to apply. That covers the race, gender, disability, etc. But the whole point of the equity statement is to really encourage people through your job description from all walks of life and backgrounds to apply to your jobs. So here's what we did. We took a 6-month period and we looked at if people were applying to our jobs based upon this equity statement. And when people would apply, we had this question: did our equity statement encourage you to apply? And so here's what happened over a 6-month period. 51% of people coming into our candidate pipeline said yes, this statement encouraged them to apply. And 20% said it somewhat encouraged them to apply. So what is that saying, Toby, Faraz, and Ibiemi? What is that saying? It is telling us that if you just add a statement like this, you might actually have candidates who typically wouldn't apply to your jobs actually come and apply to your roles. And so this has been a tremendous help to really support our hiring around candidates from diverse backgrounds and experiences. Next thing I want you to consider is pipelining for diversity, right? Typically what we'll do is we'll put our jobs on job boards, networks, we'll source, we'll um, uh, possibly attend events like this. We'll go to our referral networks. These are fantastic things that we should do continuously. But some other things I want you to really, really consider is partnerships and networks, and also maximizing your digital channels. So think about some partnerships that you can actually connect with in order to hire candidates from different places. And those partnerships could be, for example, the Black Professionals in Technology Network. That's a partnership that helps you to source candidates. And that's a great partnership. Actually, we just recently hired someone from our partnership from Black Professionals. There's an organization called the Ontario Chamber of Commerce that can help you reach out to many organizations, particularly people with people with disabilities. There are organizations that are focused on LGBTQ recruitment. So I encourage you to reach out to different partnerships. A lot of times these partnerships are free, right? Or maybe they might just want sponsorship for an event, but this is a way to drive your channel. And those are some great ones: Access, Career Edge, Lime Connect. Those are some fantastic ones to consider as well. And I encourage you to maximize your digital channels. As I said, candidates are now all over social media. Show them who you are. Talk about your inclusion practices on social media. And I tell you this, you're going to start to attract a lot of passive candidates that are looking for companies that are more inclusive. So I encourage you to take those steps to look outside of the regular channels that you typically do. Here's another methodology that I want you to consider, which is called the two in the pool methodology. And this is really uh, was done through a study by Stephanie K. Johnson, where what they discovered was this: when you have um, uh, one one candidate from maybe a different gender base or one racialized candidate in your finalist pool, your chances of hiring that individual is 0%. But as soon as you increase your gender base in your finalist pool to at least two candidates, or have two racialized candidates in your finalist pool, they they realize that the chances of hiring those individuals actually goes up 79.12% for from a gender perspective, and over 193% for a racialized perspective. And so the goal is have more than two people in your finalist candidate pool that come from different genders or come from different racialized groups. And I would say the same could apply to other dimensions of diversity as well, but particularly when we're thinking about visible diversity hiring, these are some things that you can employ. So I encourage you to do so. And a little bit of kind of stats on this. In my organization, when we actually use this methodology, you'll notice in January to June of 2020, before using the methodology, we hired 21% women identified, 79% male. But then from July to October, just a 4-month period with using this methodology, we were able to increase our hiring of women identified candidates by 4%. And I kid you not, these are real stats. To the point where today, this was last year, but to the point where today, our hiring of women identified individuals for the year has gone up somewhere between 6 to 8%. This is an actual methodology that I have proven, and it does really, really work. Another concept that I want you to consider is structured interviewing, starting with your resume review, right? Think about, for example, who reviews your resumes? Is it just one recruiter on the team? Maybe think about having multiple people. Now, I know that there are some softwares that can help remove names, education, etc. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's really, really good, particularly for larger organizations. But when you're small and you don't have the budget, just get multiple people to review your shortlist of candidates to ensure that we're bringing in the right talent from different backgrounds. Another thing that you want to consider is simulations and situational exercises. And what this does is it reduces bias in the process. Typically, hiring managers, when they have 4 candidates in a hiring pool, they can develop in-group bias where they say, oh, the 2 candidates who are similar to me in identity and similar to me in education, those are the 2 candidates I want to move forward with. But what you can do is use simulations. So in, for example, tech roles, you might want to use a tech test or a pairing exercise. Maybe in the sales role, you might want to do a presentation. In a customer success role, maybe you do a case study. But what you can do is give everyone the ability to do a simulation of the actual work environment, and then you can actually see which of the candidates would actually thrive the best in your environment. And what you might find is you might find the candidates that are not the ones that are typically in the in group of the hiring manager, maybe actually the ones that thrive better than everybody else. And so I encourage you to do that. So what a simulation would look like is just an example is, let's say, a software developer role. So if you have a software developer and they go through an interview process, what you want to do is one of your interviews, you're going to have a pairing exercise. And that pairing exercise would be them sitting down and coding with you and another team member, right, on a project. And so what you're looking for is you're looking for the way that they code and their style of coding and how they actually ask questions during that time and how they work with the team on the project. So you're simulating the actual work environment. And the reason you're doing that is because you want to see how they work and if they would contribute to your actual teams if they were to come in and work on the teams full time. Hopefully that helps. Right? So I encourage you to do that. The next thing is think about structured interviewing. So depending on the applicant tracking system that you use, one I would suggest to you is Lever. Lever is a fantastic one if you're looking for one. Depending on the applicant tracking system you use, you can actually do scoring and grading of each candidate, right? And so I encourage you to have more structured interview questions that can be graded. So maybe you have 10 questions and 3 of them you're actually grading or evaluating at every interview stage. Now, let's say, for example, at the end of the interview process, you have 4 candidates. Let's say Tanisha scores 10 out of 10 on all the evaluation questions, and let's say John scores 7 out of 10. Now, let's say the hiring manager says to you, as the recruiter, I want to hire John. Well, this is where you're going to empower your recruiters now to become talent advisors, where the recruiter goes to the hiring manager and says, listen, hiring manager, why do you want to hire John when he scored 7 out of 10 when Tanisha actually scored 10 out of 10? And you can have a real conversation, right, to ensure that you're reducing bias in the process. And that is what is key. But how do you ensure that there is no bias in the scoring? Well, each evaluation question should have um, a few points to let us know what we're looking for in terms of the answers, right? And so, if, for example, in each interview stage, you have 3 questions that are different in nature, right? Then all you have to do is make sure that the answers that are being given by the candidate are specific to what you're looking for in the answers. And so at the end of the day, whoever scores at the highest level, right? That may typically be the candidate you pursue. And if you decide to pursue another candidate, we have to justify why we're doing that. And that's really, really key, right? Again, we want to make it fair. We want to make it equitable. And the final thing, diversify your hiring teams. Don't just have one person throughout every stage interviewing your candidates. Make sure that you have multiple people who are part of the process. And at the end, let it be a group decision as to who you're going to hire, because that will help to reduce bias, right? Again, I only have like 3 minutes to talk about this. This I could talk about in a 1-hour session, but I just want to give you some tips to really, really consider and think about. Now, I have another poll question for all of you, which is this: if you were to actually choose one of these, or maybe everything, which of the the practices would you love to start implementing today? So the poll is up. Would love for you all to start to participate in that. Which of the practices would you want to start implementing today? All right. We've got 19 people on. I'd love to see as many of you as possible who could participate in this poll. That'd be fantastic. Which one of these tangible actions would you like to start implementing today? Go to your polls section and you can complete the poll. Awesome. This is great so far. I'll give it a minute, 1 more minute. Just go to your polls section. Okay, everyone. So the majority of people said that rethinking job descriptions is something I'd like to do. Well, now we got a tie for those who want to do everything, which is fantastic. That encourages me. Some people want to do some structured interviewing. I think all of the above is getting most of the attention now. Most people want to start implementing as much as possible. That's absolutely fantastic. That's encouraging. Some people want a pipeline for diversity. Some people want to do structured interviewing. I think that's absolutely wonderful to want to do. So awesome. Listen, this is great. Thank you everybody for participating in those polls. Really, really appreciate that. I'm gonna take away those polls now. And let me just kind of wrap it up. And if anyone has any questions, I could take them. But listen, I mean, at the end of the day, policies and processes and procedures are fantastic. But I want you to remember that this is all about hiring humans, and that's really what counts at the end of the day. And I want to encourage you to hire skilled and qualified talent, but make sure that you're hiring people from all walks of life and all backgrounds. Thank you so much for taking the time. Listen, I've got a couple minutes. If anybody has any questions, would love to take any of those questions. So here's what I'm going to do, because I know some of you might be like me who are introverts. I am going to give me 1 second, everybody, before you drop off. I am going to drop something. Here you go. I'm going to drop my LinkedIn in the chat. I want to actually encourage all you connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any further questions for me about any of these strategies or what's worked, what's not worked, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn and we'll connect and we can talk more about it. Thanks so much, everybody, for your time. Really appreciate you being here. Take care. Have a good one.